hey ya mama, 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 oh ya mama, hey ya mama, oh ya mama, hey ya mama, yeah, it's Leil Tiny Sester, which the mice mitzad adin, showing the mice balmer. The mice the tiny starts now. You went to sleep and you didn't think you were in a couple that you were going to wake up to eat. You're chayim tainis. You could have mills the tainis starts now as far as dinner slichis. It's a machlekes malamor and a ramban. The Maisa, you could say slichis tonight. This is the Maisa Tainis Esther. What's Tainis Esther? This is Divrei Tzakos on the day of Tzaka, which means to say the tshuva. This is a keneged, the yemei tshuva of whatever happened in those days. This is the Agdama before you do what you do on Purim. Stama Yechai first. The Agdama to Purim is slichus. That's what I'm trying to say. That's the Agdama to Purim. And the person doesn't chap that, doesn't begin to understand anything. The Koshitzer Magid says it depends on your Yom Kippur, what your Purim is going to be. And according to your Purim, that's what your Pesach is going to be. Purim is a meis mitzvah shakul kroivov, not just a meis mitzvah, mizman mizgalgul b'rechoivus. It's been totally lost and become meaningless, and the sun is in Kalas Rosh, and every chisorn possible was stuck on the Pur Yontav of Pur. When I was a kid, there used to be a song, and I'm just a boy whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. Doesn't matter. It was a very famous song. So I always tie the Purim as the boy which intentions are good, but he's terribly misunderstood. I have to try to understand what this was and what it was. So we'll start with the famous Gemara. We have to chop what happened. I think it's a very important thing to understand. In order to understand the different minhagim and dinim of Purim, minhagim bisman hagemora v'hamakubu b'pi harishonim v'apoiskim. Because there are other minhagim which Tosha describes them, but they're called minig shtus. The famous minhagim, which the Chassam Sofer says, minig is oisius gehenim. So we're talking about Alpha P. I'm a big fan of Gehenim, Kiyadua. Right? I think it's a great thing. It's a great cleaning experience. Otherwise, we should all be safe to get there. I'm not joking when I say it. I'm talking very serious when I say this. But yeah, there are minhagim which are going to put you there, man. And, more like Dante's Inferno. I mean, this is we have to understand what this is. Let's understand how it all started. It all started because, as the Gemara says in Shabbos, "Vayisiyatzu tachas ahor." In Shabbos, the Gemara brings on the pasuk in Shmos v'Matan Torah, "Vayisiyatzu tachas ahor." What does it mean, tachas ahor? They were under the mountain. So the Gemara melamed shekofa aleim har kigigis. That he basically put, so to speak, put the mountain over them, and it was almost like a shotgun marriage. I don't know if you know what that means. It's the type of marriage where a father tells a guy, says that either you're marry her, if not, my old shotgun is going to put some holes in you. Usually happens when there's whatever a situation which warrants the necessity of marriage. So, it's not a very pleasant thing to think about. So Taisus asked the question, I don't understand, didn't they sign Asav and Nishma? So this is Shitas at Taisus, who goes like Shitas Rashi, that they said Nasav and Nishma the day before. The Emes is according to the Ramban, that they only said Nasav and Nishma the day after the Kasha doesn't begin. I think we once mentioned this. When did they say Nasav and Nishma? They didn't say Nasav and Nishma on the day of Matan Torah. They said Nasav and Nishma during the Krisus Abris, and that's a Machlekes Tanoim, Beis or Machlekes Rishonim. When was the Krisus Abris? According to one day in Mechilta, which is what Rashi is Noikit and Chumash, it was on Dalet Sivin. According to another day in Mechilta, which Ramban is Noikit Pshat and Chumash, it was on Zion Sivin. The whole kasha of Taisus, they asked them, how can you, what do you need koflim, haki gigas? They said, Nasav and Nishma, no more day. Nasav and Nishma, Ba Yitel Mu'achar, came the next day, according to the Ramban, according to one tan. So the shaila is only by this time. Why do I think this is a kasha? I don't understand it. It's a machlekes tanoim. And this is a member of a certain tan who says every medrash agrees with the other medrash. I don't begin to understand the question. And the one who says koflim haki gigas is the one that holds that the Nasav and Nishma happened a day later. Lo zachiti ad hayoim. Lahavin shaylazu. I never asked him if it was two tanoim. So this medrash goes according to this tana. Halibid high tana. How many times have we seen this across the board? Befrat, it's divrei agod. It's a medrash. Since when do we have to miyashiv every divrei agod according to another divrei agod? Lehoyev nivra. So peshut nishtamis. It's a terrible minig of whatevers that seem to think that every medrash has to fit with every medrash. It's almost a gavra karamis, we call that. You know, the emes is the question at the beginning. According to this time, obviously, Abali Ataisvis were naked pashtus, the stomach of the mill. So this is the emes, and that's why they were naked. That's the emes. That's where they're naked. So this has to fit with this emes. They were machriya, and they felt that this was sugi couldn't be shalik hilchasa, also not hilchasa ba'agoda, and they were machriya. It's interesting the shayla of how to be machriya and these things in divrei agoda is far from pashut. I didn't think Shuvas Rajah deals with this. And Shuvas Rajah writes that the Kloli Achroin Halacha are also the Kloli Achroin Agoda. The Mashal Hilchase Kishmul and certain things, Hilchake Rab and certain things, Remeir Rebuda, Halacha Rebuda. But even that, the Rajah also points it out that also Al Pi Rav, the Klolim Achroin Ba'agoda are the same Klolim Aron Halacha, but they are Yotzim and Aklal. Himself righteous and not true, but not everything is muchach. So it's obviously that's what's happening here. The Baal Taisa, they asked this question. They had this somewhat of a kli of achroy and agada, and that's why they asked this question. Okay, this is a horror of b'mkoimo, because just for methodology. That type of question you have to. That's why you have to be a Baal Taisa to ask that question, because I wouldn't know how to ask it. But if other Rishonim don't ask the question, yeah, nishkin kasha. That's the answer. So what does it mean? Kafalim haki gigas. So the Gemara says, "Mika amarava, mika meidoy rabbi loy raisa." What does that mean? So we know the Gemara is Basra, Barchava, other places, Barikim, Basa meidoy. What's a meidoy? When a person tells you to sell something, and you agree, but you put, or you made a kinyan, and you so far coerced the seller to buy. And you don't really want to buy or sell, so you make a meidah. If they say this mekach they're about to make, it's batul mavutul. And if afterwards you bring edom meidah, that's misalik the mekach hamafreya. It's very simple. So nothing ever happened. So he says, "Mikam meidah rabbi lo raisa." If that's the case, since the whole thing was mekach bekfiyah, the whole Matan Torah, the whole was mekach bekfiyah. Interesting. Oh, the I Nasav and Nishma should die. Taisus gives different answers. Okay, one answer is once he saw the Eishak Doila, they gave up on the Nasav and Nishma. Very interesting. It really makes Nasav and Nishma like this. As soon as they saw the big fire, they said, "Forget this Nasav and Nishma. We're miskared." Okay, they didn't like fire. What can I do? Whatever Eishak Doila is, the Gilil, the Shechina, it was so big. The Adrab, they were going to walk away from Nasav and Nishma. These are all different dvarim shetzrichim iyun rav. You understand? Another thing he says over there, they were willing to do nasav v'nish and Torah b'ksav. But Torah Shabbat Pez Amul v'Yegia, no, this is Ashver that we don't want to do. We're willing to have an easy religion, no biblical values, but without nothing. So what's the problem? So if they would have had a Shmir Shabbos Gil Choser, then they wouldn't have had a problem. But the problem was in order to know Torah, you had to break your back. You had to learn it 100 times. You had to be Amul b'Torah for Shmir Sam Mitzvahs. Because otherwise you wouldn't know anything. There was no Shulchan Aruch, there was no Shas written. You had to know it all to paskin anything. Can you imagine? So that they said, forget it. Torah Shabbat Peh, to remember this and to activate this is too much. And this they didn't say Nasav V'Nish. Okay, it's definitely an interesting possibility. That's a taste. I'm not, I don't usually argue with people at that stature. Very interesting approach. Once again, the Ramban doesn't have this problem. Ramban doesn't have this problem because Nasav V'Nish happened later. Okay, so but what does it mean? But there is a Meidah. So obviously we have to say there's a Nasav V'Nishma, but Afal Piken there's a Meidah. What's the Meidah? The Meidah is this is the now. What does he say? Afal Piken Hoda Kiblu b'Me'ach Hashverosh. There was a constant Meidah on Kabbalah Satira. But Afal Piken Hoda Kiblu b'Me'ach Hashverosh. So Rashi, mi'avas hanes. Mi'avas hanes, they were makabel Torah. Again, this is what they say, kimu v'kibul ha'yehudim, kibu aleim asher kibu mikvah. Now, the Gemara, the way it is a very big tzorchim. Because a mekach which has a maidah on it, if there was a maidah, the mekach is not chal. So it means to say, l'chayra, that they were not mechuyev in Torah mitzvahs. That's a bit of a problem, to say the least. That means until Yemeach Hashverosh, until Soif Bayis, till Soif Bavel, whatever you did, there was no creases of bris between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There was nothing happening, and you weren't chayiv in mitzvahs. Obviously, that's impossible to say, and the Ramban asked the question. But obviously, these different are going to have to be explained, and however they have to be explained. The earliest one I know asked the question is the Ramban, but there are others afterwards. But the Ramban deals with this at length there in Peches and Shabbos. The Ramban is, it would be nice to do a real shir and to take apart the text, but we're not going to do that here. I'm sorry. So you're going to have, Nebuch, you're going to have to believe me. It's a very hard thing for me to ask you to do, because I love people that don't believe me, then I go after them. But in the meantime, you have to believe Nebuch. Okay, we're going to leave it at that. Tamtzis Divrei Ramban, I'm going to say, Lefi Havanosi HaYeshoro, is that it's as follows. This is based on a Gemara in Sanhedrin. Based on a Gemara in Sanhedrin that in Golus Rishon in Bavel, the Zkenim came to Yechezkel HaNavi and they told him, Eved Shegir Sheshicheroi Rabbi Klum Yesh Lo Olav. Isha, Shigirsha, Baila, Kum, Yeshlo Aleh. What do you want? Come on. Now we don't do anything anymore. Now they made their Meidah. Now it's over. We have no more relationship. Very Christian approach. Yes, God broke the relationship. There's no more covenant. If you want to make a New Testament, b'vakasha, but it didn't happen yet. So in the meantime, it's over. Other people say that after the Holocaust, a certain rabbi in a certain part of New York, which decided that after the Holocaust we're all Einim Mitzvah. He said, nah, but what can you do? It's not because what can I do? But two rabbis, actually, one printed a book. There was the Taina of the Zekenim, B'vei Yechezkel. Gamarnu, the game's over. And on that, Yechezkel says, the Gemara brings us to Kufhei, if I'm not mistaken, in Sanhedrin. It's in those Agadic pages, okay? Where Yechezkel brings the pasuk in Yechezkel, that's Yechezkel Lamed Zayin, where the pasuk says, "B'yad chazokam," I didn't leave you forever. B'yad chazokam, you're not walking away from me. And the lashon there is, "Aye get krisa sunchem." Show me the divorce, the bill of divorce. There's no gerushin. Show me the shtar shichra. There's no shtar shichra. That's the case. There was a machlekes between the Kadosh Baruch Hu and Knesset Yisrael. Is there a shtar shichra? Is there a ma'aseh gerushin, or isn't there a ma'aseh gerushin? Klal Yisrael time the Kadosh Baruch Hu did a ma'aseh gerushin and a ma'aseh shichra. He broke the covenant, and he told them lo hayu dvarim ha'elu lahadam. Now, there's obviously a machlokes, I say yes or you say no. That doesn't, it's not a machlokes in Metzias. There was obviously something there, and the machlokes is how to understand what it was. They interpreted that golus as a golus of basically of that the game's over. And Kosh Baruch said, Lo yadvar mi'ayla. And if you don't like it, I will, you're stuck. We're tied at the hook. You can check out, but you can never leave, as the man says. You here. Okay, and I'm here with you. So what happened here? That has to be understood. So the Ramban basically said that the Meidor Rabbah is not going into Eretz Yisrael when everything is fine and well and God is with me and there's a Beis HaMikdash and there's Gilui Shechina and there's Nevuah. Yeah, that was acceptable. There's no Meidor on that. But they understood the Krisis HaBris was only for a Zman of Geula. As much as there is a Krisis HaBris for also Bizman Hester Panim, that lechatchila, they said, no, this we didn't include. This wasn't part of it. The Kafalem HaKegigis, as far as they're concerned, was the pshat is, as long as we understand you're with us, that's when we have a commitment. As long as you're not with us, I'm going to have to understand what this means and how, okay, then lechatchila, al matziv kazeh, lo nitan habris. And the Chiddush of Yecheskel is, no, I hate to tell it to you. The Chiddush of Bris is now too, and you know why? Because I never left you. It's a nice way of saying the Bris is together when we feel a reciprocal relationship. And when we don't feel a reciprocal relationship, there is no Krisis HaBris. There's a Maidan. This is a serious Maidan. And this matzah, we didn't have a Bris. It's not a mysterious medal. I'm afraid that Chatchil they weren't mitzvah. It's a chol of the Chat. The Ramban himself says that. He says as long as they were in Eretz Yisrael, there was no problem. And he quotes this Gemara in Sanhedrin. He says, you know, when the Maidah is on the matzav of Evet, Shegir Sheirab, Shichrei Rabbi, Klum Yeshloi Olav, Isha, Shegir Shabayla, Klum Yeshloi Olav. On that, the answer was, no, I get Krisis Imchem. When did that I get Krisis Imchem internalize? The answer is that happened in Purim. It was a time of Yecheskel, but they were not happy with it. The Yehuda Kiblu b'Me'achashverosh says now they realize the taina of Yecheskel that there is no get. That's the Ma'aseh Shehoya. Now we have to explain it, but that's what this is. It's a nice way of saying K'moshe Mavur b'Bahag, and also in Shiltus, that basically Adif Yom HaPurim Ki Yom Shenitna B'Torah. It is adif for me to say other Yom HaTorah, the Shai of Lachem, LaHashem, V'chulu, just like Matan Torah, Kul Amal Pliga Debinu Lachem, Purim is ein Chefse von Lachem. Forget the Lashem is a Psashvachem Maisus, it's a chos. I once was shown by my Rebbe in the Kutim of the Gra, where he writes over there, Dover Mufla, he writes that every Yom Tiv, our minig is the Machlekes, Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Shura, Kuloi Lachem, or Kuloi Lashem. And how do we pass in that what Chetzi Lachem, V'chotzi Lashem? That's what the Rambam passes La Halacha. So he says, where's the Chotzi Lachem in Yom Kippur? So to grow the Chotzi Lachem of Yom Kippur is Purim. This is the Lachem of Yom Kippur. Now talk to me. Now behave yourself. This is the Sudas Yom Tiv of Yom Kippur. Hu Asher Amarti Koinim, name of the Kosher, says, Avivu Da'asta Yom Kippur, that's what you'll have a Purim. And to cut away your Purim from your Yom Kippur, this is a Mekatis Benatias. You're cutting, you're totally taking something out of context. I don't want to disturb you. I do, but I don't know what. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what it was by Gdoila Olam HaAmitim, by Chachmei Avoida. That was the tzura. You know, if you look at the Zechreis of Oz and Slabodke and Purim, they used to sit by the altar. And from Eli Kaplan was an Ilui Otzum, wrote a book, Mikvah Sayira. Yeah, he used to sit by the altar, and what he used to do in Graman, he used to say over the whole Masechta. Yeah, this is the Lachem in Slabodke. Okay, that's the lechem. Say over in rhyme and riddle, yeah, say over the Masechta, the major sugis, not just say the names of the sugis, that a baby knows how to do. That I had once a group of guys that did it over here too, in the Purim spiel. That was the days when Yoni Segal was here. Yoni Segal. So the Purim spiel. So they took all my favorite songs, whatever, not the Jewish ones, and they rolled, like the major sugyas that we did in Shir and the major. That's right. At least I know your chazard. That was your bechina. So you can get a book for that today. But then they didn't give books. For me, you got a smile, a kiss, and a pat in the back, which, believe me, is worth something. Okay, at the end of it means you know something. It's a very important thing to know something. If not, you're no march. What can you do? But that was a tzura of Purim. Sitting begadless. It wasn't not. It was. It's free. It's happy, but it's begadless. The sprach, the language, which is begadless. The world has become small, and moichen the godless it doesn't exist too much, and so it's not just moichen the katnas, it's katnas period without moichen. Okay, that's a metzius which is very hard to relate to. That's probably why we're sitting here today. It's very hard. It's very hard for me, these Purims. I really have angst. You think I'm joking? You don't know me enough. I'm go crazy. Okay, but you have to be moichen the godless. First made Purim, this is the lechem of my Yom Kippur. And just like my Matan Torah is Yom Kippur, because Le'aleinu Matan Torah of the first luchas, the kiyum of the bris was in Shavuos. But the hakshama of the bris, Nebuch, there was no hakshama of the bris, because in Shavuos and B'tamas that broke. When was the akshama? When was the materialization of that bris? When did we get our luchas ha'edus? That was Yom Kippur. Tiyuchap on Shavuos. You're not celebrating Kabbalah HaTorah. You're celebrating the bris HaTorah, the Nesinas HaTorah. There was no Kabbalah. You didn't get any Kabbalah there. Moshe came down the mountain. By the time he came down, you were worshiping the holy cow. The Egel Azov, Vuven. There was no Kabbalah HaTorah then. It was Nesinas HaTorah. It was a Chag mitzad HaNoisen, but Nebuch mitzad HaMekabel. You say, L'cha Hashem HaTzdaka, V'lanu Boishis HaPonim. Did you ever think of that? Anybody celebrate a first marriage that didn't go well? You're happy on Shavuos? They broke the ksuba. No, didn't Moshe do that when he broke the tablets? That's what it says in Rashi there. Right? They forget it, goodbye. So the Ramban says, you have to say, it looked like there was a forest of bris, but there wasn't. So the Ramban, the bris continued. It's the old bris. There's a new crease of bris in Sefer Bamidbar, the Ramban writes, but the Klolos of Nitzavim says, no, that's just a chizuk of the previous bris. It's not a new bris. There's no new bris. The bris was Dalet Sivan or Zion Sivan. That was the bris. The Shechina comes down where Shechina, Kadosh Baruch Hu decided the Elyonim Lemata, V'tachtonim Lemala, that state, that dynamic that for now a man can creep up to the heavens and God comes down to man in all situations, that's there. That did not break. But it wasn't realized because there was no partner. You two-timed him. It's like the kala's waiting for you and you walked away with the whatever it be to a motel. And then, Baruch Hashem, you came back on Yom Kippur. Then because you came back, we asked the guests to leave. We had a quiet wedding in Shul. You know what I mean? It was B'tzina. But that's what it was. You have to chap what Yom Kippur is. Yom Kippur is the hakshama, the realization of what was supposed to be on the bris of Shavuos, which was supposed to be realized when. Do you ever think when Matan Torah was supposed to be? The Yuchap that Shivasa B'Tamas was supposed to be Yom Kabbalah Saluchas. Did you ever realize that Shivasa B'Tamas is supposed to be the day of Kabbalah Saluchas Rishonos? That was supposed to be a very big holiday. And it's such a tragic thing. It's like losing it the day where you're supposed to have it. Think for 2 minutes what this is. There's a Zohar which discusses this. The Sfas Emes brings it also. Also, I remember this is not to be talked about today. But yeah, Shivasa times was what you took the most beautiful day in your life and made the most terrible day in your life. So terrible it is that the Chazal say there's not a peronius sheba'olam, which ain't by Micheta Egel. All this Yisurim the Klal Yisrael has from then until today and further, every part of that Yisurim is a shtickle pira'on from that Cheta Egel. Think of all the Yisurim Klal Yisrael, they're all, what God did is taking the big stone of destroying us, He crumbled it into pellets and keeps throwing them. But they hurt, because then He thinks they're small compared to what could have been, but they're quite painful. Think of the Crusades, think of the Holocaust. Think of thousands of boys that die here in this country. This is Yisurim G'daylim. Think of all the Yiddish Tzoros. These are all piron of the Cheta Egel. You chap what that could have been and what it turned into. If you realize the tragedy of Shivasa B'Tammuz, you wouldn't be able to walk out of your house. For me, one of those pironis is Tisha B'Av. That's just another part of that piron. It's Shivasa B'Tammuz. That was supposed to happen. And then what did happen? When did we get it? In another fashion, in a smaller wedding, and Luchas Shniyos. That was Yom Kippur. And that's the Torah you have today. So your Shavuos was realized on Yom Kippur after Tshuva. That's what happened. It's the same bris, but with chizukim to the bris. Those chizukim include ribui klolis v'chulu. Ramban describes it. The Ramban says, yeah, now we need a lot of klolis. Because why? Because, yeah, we got to make sure you guys behave. So we have to add a little incentive as God. But he knows his kala, and he understands this is the kala, which has to think, you have a mare, she's a good run, but you need to use a spur every so often. So he puts in the spurs, and he kicks, and we run the race, and hopefully we win. Okay, the Kentucky Derby, whatever it be, we get there. But that's what this is. So now you chap what this is. We basically thought that we came Churban Abayis. The game's over. That Yom Kippur died. Whatever you got in Yom Kippur, no more. So when the Eden came to say, Eved Shishichrei Rabbi, Isha Shishichrei, what are they saying? They were again saying, forget it, the game's over. We said the game was over in Shivasa B'Tammuz. He was nice enough to say, okay, listen, the game continues. We screamed again, the game's over. This is the Meidar Rabbi L'Raisa. We say, okay, you walked out. You obviously ain't interested because we're very bad. Goodbye. And do you have what Chazal say? Chazal say that Suda V'Achashverosh, the big chait of the Purim was, Nenu Mesudasa Shaysei Russia. I've heard so many different pirushim of this, I can't understand. Why can't you say Pashut Pshat? I never understood. I heard so many pirushim. Oh, God. So many pirushim. I remember when Rabbi Aaron once told me, Pshat is because he was a corrupt Suda because they had to tax so many people for hedonistic pleasures of the elite. This, I remember my Rabbi Aaron told me. It was very typical of his moral posture. He was an unbelievable humanist and a tzaddik yesod olam in yashris, amidos. Okay, so that's something else. Yeah, but very nice. Oh, but that's a Pshat. I had this. This isn't the first time. Yeah, we had that. Okay, Zer Shein. This is Shteit. Was Shteit in Chazal? Shteit in Chazal Mefurish. I don't understand what you want. Shteit in Chazal Mefurish. What did he make the Suda for? He made the Suda because he figured the 70 years are over and the temple is not going to be rebuilt, and that's why he took out the Klei HaKodesh to say, "Come on, you got no more Migdash. Let's drink wine over it." He took out the big Tikkun and says, "Forget it. There's no more Kahuna. It's all over. The game's over, boys." What was he tied? Jews, forget it. The covenant is done. Nothing's happened. He was tiny. It was a Suda celebrating Eved, Sheshichrei, Rabbi, Isha, Shigir, Shabayla. This was the party. And the biggest tragedy is that all the Jews joined. Mainly you feel that way. Be downtrodden. Be sad. Celebrating it. Do you realize what that is? That hurts. If I would be God, I would also be hurt. it's very human to be hurt there. Can you imagine someone having a not successful marriage and there's a divorce, and you go out and party with your girlfriends or the boyfriends, whatever it be, and the other person doesn't feel too good about it. Now that's what the Jews did. They went and they partied with the goyim that they were now near kichol goyim beis Yisrael, and there's no more krisis bris. Take away. Shivas B'Tammuz was the first time we did it. We also partied, didn't we? Moshe goes down, sees they're partying, they're dancing. Okay, and now they danced again. They danced over what this is mamish biras haluchas. Not just biras, this is mamish biras habris. That's what's frightening. So you talk about Purim, understand the situation the Jews were in. Let's try to understand what brings them to this. I think it's quite simple. The passage says, "Ki rabbi b'nei sheimema mibnei be'ula amar Hashem." Chazal said that tzadikim hemati lehem b'churbana yoser mibibinyana. Ki rabbi b'nei sheimema, there are more of the people who exist when things are desolate. B'nei be'ula, from the children of the lady which has a realized marriage. What does that mean? The realized marriage is binyana shel migdash, and the sheimema, the desolate marriage, is the churban habayis. Tzadikim hemati lehem b'churbana yoser mibinyana. Vas meinta, so the marsha. What does this mean? It means something quite simple. It means to say that, as I've mentioned many times, the famous Gemara, the Gemara discusses Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. It says, why are they called Anshe Knesset HaGedolah? She'irziru HaTorah L'Yoshna. That they return things the way, they put Judaism back in the right perspective. What did they do? So this is before the Gemara says, even Yirmiyahu, when the Churban came around, he couldn't say certain shvachim of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. He had a hard time saying Gadol, Gibor, and Noira. And it's a beautiful Gemara. You don't know how beautiful it is. Lashon Gemara is Yodim es riboinam ki soine shekeru. They know God. He hates people that lie. Can't handle a non-honest relationship. However, you should also be hoylech b'derech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a bracha g'dayla. You should be saying the sheker. Sheker in learning, sheker in relationships, sheker in anything which smells that isn't accurate. It's venom. Soin, it doesn't say he doesn't tolerate sheker. Soina sheker. I know what soina means. There, I know what it means. You're supposed to be soina amalek. You're supposed to be soina sheker. So I don't know what soina amalek is, but soina sheker baruch Hashem I know. Okay. You're supposed to get like, like when you hear something which how many times have you told the story of Bzisla once? Almost killed me in when I set up shot in that Taisvus. You guys complain. He didn't smile and say, "Look at it again." No. I remember I said Pshat in the Taisvus. He looked at me and says, "What's the Lashon Hara of my mama?" What are you saying, Lashon Hara, my mother? He says, "I don't know your mother. The Taisvus is my mother. What you just said is Prosta Lashon Hara. That's not what they mean." I was taken aback. Like I never heard such a personalized involvement before. This is worth, believe me, the chevrolet of my mother were worth it to hear that from a Gavra Rabbi. That's the truth. I learned a lot from this man. A lot of years. That's truth, a lot of years. Didn't run away after 2. Stuck around for over 10, if you really want to know. Yeah. And don't you think for 1 minute it was easy. I got news for you. What he demanded, you don't even know what it looks like yet. Okay? He demanded total command of the material with everything, with all the scope, before you walk into his room. Now we talk. And if not, get out. Did you hear me say get out? Yeah. Well, you threw me out. Okay? You know what I mean? But all that's nothing. To tell me that the Taisus is his mother, that means that's his womb. That's where he's formed. That's where he lived. That's what he recognizes is his ratius. And to say a bad shot in the Taisus is Pashat Lashon Hara on his mother, and he meant it. He didn't have a sense of humor. He meant it. You understand? That's worth the whole B'sis Yishorim compounded. That's, if there's anything musical, Shimish Tamid Chachamim, that's what it is. Sichas Chulin Shel Tamid Chachamim, Tzorech Limud. This is Sichas Chulin Shel Tamid Chachamim. Taki given Tamid Chacham. Tak. Mam Shel Tamid Chacham. And this is Sichas Chulin Shel Tamid Chacham. Lashon Hara, Pshat, the Kum Pshat in the Taisus is Lashon Hara on your mother. But for that, you have to feel that Taisus is your mother. If you wouldn't dare say a Kum Pshat in Taisus. You'd be very, very careful. You check all the scope. You wouldn't say, you keep your mouth shut before you knew so much more, before you did all the legwork. It's a very problematic thing. People shoot their mouth so fast. What's the problem? Say Chefza Gavra Chalais and get it done with. You know what I mean? What is this, 4, 6 terms? You know, and they work. So what's the problem? Yeah. I hope your marriage will be more stable than that. Okay? You understand? That's how you say it goes. It's nice to remember, you know, that what did I just do? Why am I doing this to myself? Okay, so L'maisa, you have to understand that they walked away from all that. Do you know what it is to walk away from all that and party that? To wait all that whole Torah, that whole thing, and they were going to parse it, forget it. How painful can this be to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How terrible this was. So you know why? I'm telling you why. Because when they were used to a relationship which was ongoing. They were in this relationship which was, you know, hugs and kisses, smiles. Rav Tomech. A loving, a doting spouse. You know, what you guys probably know. Asara Nisim, you know, there's always Nisim. Everything works. What's the problem? Spufim, Mishtachim, Revochim. You know, I don't know, you know, this man Shimon Tzaddik, the Nema Ravi kept on rolling. You know, everything, there's so many nisim. It's beautiful, all these nisim, right? And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, Kivsa Achad ben Shivim Zeivim, Ayei Gvuroisov, Nochrim Mekarkrim Beicholei, Ayei Neuroisov. Nochrim Ishtabdim Bebanav, Aye, what's it? Godel Gibber V'Naira, one of the two. I don't remember how it was. How could I call God Godel Gibber V'Naira if I see Nochrim Ishtabdim Bebanav, Nochrim Mekarkim Beicholoi, Kivsa Achas Ben Shivim Zevim, and she's barely going to make it. I see pain. I see tzoros. I see a churban. I see the whole, what we saw as the most sanctified, important place in the world. People are partying there now. It's meaningless. When we think the Jews are supposed to be Bnei Malachim, they are in prison. When we think, will they survive? Chances are nil. And they couldn't say, God will give a because they knew that God does not. Yo didn't say. At the moment, I don't see it. In other words, in the world of Nevuah, which means a Gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he lost an Havana. He didn't have Havana. He was not typhus, the Metzias of Gadol Gibber V'Noira in Hester Panim. This is not some Joe Dando. Yirmiyahu Navi. Nevuah didn't give him an answer. How many times? We have that quite a few times in Shas. Shaul, Nevuah didn't know. Shaul and Nevuah, Chayte Mati Aleh, the Gemara says, die. Shola Kadosh Baruch Hu, and he says Yas Tshuva v'Yiskaper. The Agiluim that Kadosh Baruch Hu does through Nevuah, and the Agiluim which don't come through Nevuah. Nevuah didn't have an answer. Yirmiyahu couldn't say Gadol Gibor V'Norah. Now, it wasn't like there was a Madbeah Bracha. Let's understand that. Today you have a Madbeah Bracha, you're doing it a day to the Anshe Knesset Agdoila. You say what the Siddur says. Okay? If you have to write your own poetry, don't say things you're not holding by. That's the Yesod. But then, everybody wrote his own poetry. There was no matbeya habracha. Today it's easy to daven. I don't know what this. Most of you don't even know what the words mean. Definitely not the context. Never not the oimeka kavana. So what do you say? I'm mispal adaita anshik nasagdaila. I'm mispal adaita of the mechaber. That's very good for the tefillas of anshik nasagdaila. When you start doing these German piyutim, if you don't know what you're talking about, you're pushing batashas on your time. Shaila of bittul Torah, not a shaila, it's vada. You have to know it. If not, don't say it. Learn it. What's the value of saying slichus and medieval poetry if you don't have a clue of what you're saying? There's no kedusha in the psukim there. There's no psukim. It's like reading lahavdil, like reading agnon v'lo lavin ivrit. Klum. Elamai, our minig is to say it. That means our minig is to learn it, understand it, and then say it. Ki yodim shribonim kisen shekel. This is a klal gadol ba'avodas Hashem. It means to say, if you want to say slichas, don't just kvetch. You have to study them. What's the problem? Today's kinnis, study them. Mayesh. I mean, I remember as a bach, I went to find Rishonim on slichas and kinnis. Yeah, this bach Hashem, Harukas Abaysim. When the Talmidim Marik, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, a big P on slichas and kinnis. I went and bought it. It's the Karamatzias today. It's printed by Professor Freimel Melech Auerbach. Okay. Whatever. Yeah, but you have to know. I don't understand. I don't know how people daven. Well, maybe Art Scroll, it translates it all, so at least I didn't have it when I was growing up or when I was maturing at all. But so I went to learn the primary sources. But yeah, you have to know this. So Yirmiyahu didn't have a book, so he had to write his own poetry. He wasn't going to write poetry. They didn't chop. I don't know what to say. Just as today we don't say Yud Kei Vav Kei, as I taught in the shir, because we have no hasaga of what it means. And la'asud lavi, we will have a hasaga. The Gemara says M'sachim, so we will articulate Yud Kei Vav Kei. Remember we learned take Gemara M'sachim Daf Nun. So the same thing here. He had no hasaga what it means. Nevuah didn't come down with hasaga what God will give of an means Zman HaChurban. So as far as Nevuah was concerned, hu lo gadol, hu lo gibor, hu lo nora. Problem, we have a depleted God, almost impotent. Now, you can translate this, he's just impotent. Or you can say, no, he's pretty big, but he doesn't care anymore. Here is where the impasse is. Here's where the rupture is. Here's where the tension is. If I can't say God will give her an I really don't see it. The rabbis don't see it. But still, the prophets still think he's around. It's just we don't understand. What's the next stage for most people? It's not that it's true, but we don't understand. How does it work in humanity? Doesn't everybody know that every matzav of b'di'evet becomes the chatchila, finally becomes a mitzvah? Don't we always justify our deficiencies and make that ideology? Isn't that what we all do? We're not going to admit deficiency. We will say the system is deficient. I will never acknowledge my ignorance. I will say the man doesn't know how to teach. Or so on and so forth. One does not demand things from oneself. It's not in human character. We demand things from other people. We have circus mirrors in front of our eyes, making us beautiful, slim, and smart, and efficient. And the fault is always everybody else. And that's what happens. It's very simple. In a system of Hester Pun in which we can't say God will give a v'naira, I can either say because I don't understand, but it's there, or I can say, no, maybe it isn't. And why isn't it? Did he become old? No, he doesn't care anymore. The game's over. He let us go. I don't want to sound terrible. If it would have been during Sancta Temple, they would have said, well, maybe the apostles are right. You know what I mean? Don't you know, believe me, that in the advent of the Holocaust, do you know how the church was revving up to do missionary work, to tell the Jews, don't you see that you have no more covenant? And if it wouldn't have been Hey Iyar Tafshin Chet, and you wouldn't have this unbelievable country that we have today, believe me, Jews would have fallen like flies in front of the missionary effort at the time. Once again, you have to have a certain perspective of history to chap. You're living in a beautiful world. You grew up in Midat Israel. You take it for granted. The only problem is in Bibi tzodek or lo tzodek. You don't chap what you're at. You will never understand it because you don't know what it was without it. That's all. You'll never understand. You didn't even breathe the air of people that walked out of the Holocaust. Yeah, מצלמים אותם את הזקנים ליום השואה ומראיינים אותם. It's nebuch. It's not the real thing. If you would know what this is, you would hold it so dear and so. It's an amud gadol of Gili Kvodi Yisborach Ba'olamai. Yeah. Why? Because believe me, everyone was saying Ayik v'roisav, Ayu ne'roisav, and maybe he left us. How many people walked away from Yiddishkeit? He walked away from us. Forget it. He forgot us. We forgot him. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands. There were B'nai Torah and everything back then. They walked away. Ayik v'roisav, Ayu ne'roisav. They did. And they walked away in a terrible way. There are people that did not even want to recognize themselves as Jews, and one of them was actually the Cardinal of Paris, Jean-Marie Listiger. That's one. It's Shemaiah Listiger. You understand? That's one. There are multitudes. I had a student in a certain seminary or some school that I taught that her mother revealed finally that she was Jewish way after the Holocaust, and he was in denial, didn't want to know about it. And she couldn't handle Judaism. She ended up living with a Palestinian. So when you talk about what happened in Bavel, why do you think? Sometimes it's frightening. It took a long time for Jews to assimilate in the Golah, in our Golas. The real assimilation only happened when the walls of the ghetto fell down and we were living in poverty and persecution, so we found a way out by baptizing ourselves. And, not that many, but it happened. And slowly but surely the Enlightenment movement came in and people shedded their religious identity. But even then, intermarriage was not the biggest thing happening. Now it's rampant, but if you would have gone back in the 30s and the 40s, that was not the thing. But when you look at Galut Bavel, it's frightening. There was mass intermarriage. Anybody reads Tanakh and reads the Gemara knows what happened. That Ezra had to make this big convocation with the Kriyas HaTorah HaKlali, v'yutzichim lafrid, they had to take away the Nashim Nachuyot. It was only 70 years. 70? What's 70 years? It's a garnished. In 70 years, you walked away, you married a shiksa? Yeah. You know why? Because the trauma was enormous. By us 70 years of Galus, okay, das Esther upon him, another Esther upon him, another Esther upon him. But from Gilui Shechina to Esther upon him, we didn't have a middle road. If it's not this, it's nothing. So he's not here, so he doesn't care. If he doesn't care, I'll marry Christina. Why shouldn't I marry Christina if he's not here? Evet shegir shei rabbi, isha shegir shei rabbi, klum yesh l'chol leah. That's what it looks like. When you're talking about Golus Bavel, remember what we're talking about. We're talking about a short period of time, 70 years. We take it at 70 years, nothing. Yeah, mass assimilation, destruction of religion. The religion that you know today that works well in Golus, brother dear, that's Yochanan ben Zakkai. Yavne v'chachameh saved Judaism, remodeled it and restructured it for the Golus. If you know your history, this is not. Yeah, they did it for you. That's why we didn't have that terrible reaction in Golus Edom that was in Bavel. We didn't have mass assimilation within 70 years. But there was nothing there. Ezra came. Anshe Knesset Agdala came. Yeah, towards the end. That's when we started patching things up. That's when they started making a model of religion, Bismat Hester Panim. But Lachatchila, we didn't, it was extreme rupture. And Takit says, who are the Anshe Knesset which are Mechadish, that Mika Moicha Ba'elim Hashem, the Gemara says, how do you read it? Mika Moicha Ba'ilmim Hashem. You are so big, wow, and you're so silent. Which means you're here, you care, but you choose to be silent. Mika, we don't say Mika Moicha Ba'elim, is read in our minds, Mika Moicha Ba'ilmim Hashem, you're mute. Yeah, Nochrim Shabdim Bebonav V'Shoisek Eloheng Kvuroisav Nochrim Mikarkim Becholoi V'Shoisek Elohem Neira'oisav. You know what I mean? Kivsa Achas Ben Shivim Sevim, and she still exists, and we do. Elohem Neira'oisav. And we say Akel HaGadol HaGiber V'Anaira today, you don't think of the Gadol Giver V'Anaira of Bayis Rishon. You think of the Gadol Giver V'Anaira that was Mischadish in Golus Bavel. In Soif Golus Bavel. Soif Golus Bavel is the Gilul Milsa, the new, I suddenly understand that Yirmiyahu didn't know. But there's Gadol Giver V'Anaira in Hester Panim. Hester Panim doesn't mean he doesn't care. That's what we thought. Hester Panim doesn't mean that we have no more relationship. Hester Panim means, I guess now you guys have to do it on your own, and I will be behind the scenes. I won't let you go. But I guess, you know what? Gilui Panim means you were still in college. You didn't finish your degree. Okay, guys. I thought this was going to be a longer postdoctoral, funding over here, and you were going to be a Fulbright or whatever it was. No, because of your Averis, there's no Fulbright. College is over. Go to work. Go to work means, okay, there's no more pampering. You don't have the rabbi teaching you, smiling you, and hugging you, of anything. Now do it on your own. Now do it on your own in a rough world, man. And it's a wild world out there. Now do it. You got boots, walk. All of a sudden, that's what we woke up to. That's what we woke up to. Mika moicha ba'ilmim, yeah. Because the good father does not always teach, paddle the boat for the child. He lets the kid learn how to do it on his own. And even if it means to say he may turn over the boat, he'll help to make sure he doesn't drown. But let him learn how to get into a boat after he falls out of it. He's got to get his sea legs, so to speak. That's what it is. Who is the Chazal? Why are they called Anshe Knesset Agdala? Shechzira Torah L'Yoshna. That they reinstituted the Keil HaGadol Giver V'Anaira Zot Marsha. Which members of Anshe Knesset Agdala did this? This is the Bezdin of Mordechai Tzaddik. That means Ba'avas Hanes. The Chiddush of Purim is, you chap what this is. We, because of Ayik V'Roisav, Ayrin and Ra'osav, we screamed, the game is over, and we went to a party to celebrate that it's over. And what was the tshuva, the Divrei Hatzaka? What is this tainus? This is the tshuva from the fact that we were mishtatev in a simcha of the Prikas Bris. We celebrated Christianity, for goodness sakes. We celebrated the breaking of the covenant. Do you understand how heinous this is? And we did tshuva from that because we realized the covenant was, and will never be broken. That's what this holiday is. Are we beginning to understand that's what this is? And it is a holiday of expressing a relationship with God when He really is not clearly there. It actually almost looks like He doesn't care. And we realize that even when it's the worst situation, we're about to die. We're intermarried. We did everything. We've done everything, right? He cares. He's there. He wants us to rise to challenges. That's what the holiday is. Now we received the new Torah. Because that's Taka the Pshat. The Maidar Rabbi Raisa was, according to the Ramban, let me explain. What does it mean, Kof Aleim HaKegigis? Fine. And Morel explains in our Chodosh, in Tiferes, the mice, it's a big Bisyankif in Pesach. Andrew Blebla Eger and Teresemis, start showing Pekis L'Chsidis. And Alter Rebbe in Biyar Balayla Hu, who can Teror, V'chulu. Okay, that's my nighttime reading. Okay, it's not in the base medrash. That's like the Chazon Ish on the bed. So they all say the same thing. They say something. I think I don't know if I ever taught it. If not, I'll just repeat it. It's important to know. It says that the pasuk says in Re'eh that we must eat matzah and observe Pesach. Ki v'chipazon yotzosam mitzrayim. Why is Yitziyim b'chipazon a reason for celebrating Pesach? So I said this in a shmuz and Reishis about a month and a half ago, and someone Moshe Rosen did a nice job of rewriting it, but I just want the Nakuda, which is Naget to me. And the Meister, they all say the same thing. But I'll start with a Hanacha, which is very important. The Gemara says, Omer Gamliel Haya I think it's Kuftas Vavim Psachim or Kuftas Zayin. Kol Mishli Omer Shloshid V'Omer Eile B'Pesach Lo Yotzir Deichev Asai Pesach Matzah Umorah Pesach Ma Omer Ma Pesach Zishon Oichlim Al Shum Ma Al Shum etc. Matzah Zishon Oichlim Al Shum Ma Al Shum etc. Mor Zishon Oichlim Al Shum Ma etc. Right? Is that machlekes harishonim? What does it mean? Lo yotzi deichev asay. The Ran says lo yotzi yidei mitzvah shleima. Which mitzvah? The mitzvah Sipis Mitzrayim demands that you should not just tell the story. You should use, so to speak, props. So you tell the prop. The prop is Pesach Zu. Oh, and tell the story. You do it with props. You do it with in kindergarten or in school they showed you certain things. Oh, this is now remember this and go on for it. That's the Ran. In Taisa steht an anderer Wort. And Taisa says, how do I know this? So Taisa says, how do I know that you're not Techiva? So Dichsiv, Taisa says, Va'amartem zevach Pesach. V'hukshu matzah umorer lePesach. Ma Pesach ba'amira, af matzah umorer ba'amira. Ayin shem b'taisvus. Anybody who knows at least something in Psachim understand that the hekesh of matzah umorer is not. It's within the halacha is that korban Pesach has to be eaten to the eish umatzah umorim yechua. In the context of doing the mitzvah, they're all three components of one big mitzvah, Pesach, Matzah, Mor. There's one halacha, there's a din, that the achilas HaKorban is Mechayev Amira, so the achilas HaMatzah is Mechayev Amira, and the achilas HaMor is Mechayev Amira. The Chmuchach, when Tais Lo Yotzei Chivasi, does not mean the Lo Yotzei Yitzias Mitzrayim, means Lo Yotzei Mitzvahs Pesach, Lo Yotzei Mitzvahs Mor, Lo Yotzei Mitzvahs Matzah. That's what it means. It's a din in the matzah, morah, and Pesach that they're tone amira. That's the machlekes, a famous, not famous. It's machlekes of Taishus and Rava. Whether it's a din in another way, a surah of kiyum sipri siyas mitzrayim, or no, it's a halacha in surah sachir. What kind of matzah? It's a nice way of saying you can't just eat matzah. You have to eat matzah mevu'eret. Sounds like mishnah mevu'eret. You have to have maror mevurar. Mevu'ar, that's what it's called, mevu'ar, right? Or Pesach mevu'ar. You don't just eat matzah, you eat an explained matzah. You don't just eat a wafer, you have to eat a wafer which symbolizes an idea. That's the Agdor here. That's a kiyum din, the tzurus mitzvah. Not that it's ma'akev, but the mitzvah of Chatchil is not a kiyum in Sipri Tzit Mitzrayim, it's a kiyum in matzah, mor, and Pesach. This is a machlekes. Why do I say this? Because, in other words, when it says over here that you speak, in other words, whatever explains the matzah is part of the guf kiyum of the matzah. And if the pasuk says you're supposed to eat a kibi chipazon yotzosam and mitzrayim, that chipazon is supposed to explain the essence of what you're supposed to think about. Why are you eating matzah today? The mitzvah's matzah comes from the word chipazon. When I grew up, haste meant waste. Chipazon is a midah meguna. Ba'aretz mishi godel magashash, chipazon ma'asatan. Chipazon de lo tov. What is the word of chipazon? He steht the Chassidus as I said over Pashat. He says the way steht the Chassidus that it's a bisa bekutra. Anybody that learns and sees the way the Rambam describes the situation of the Jews in Egypt and Mitzrayim, except for Shevet Levi, they were all pure Oved Avodah Zarah. Mamish Oved Avodah Zarah Gemur, and they were married to Mitzriot. The whole spiel. They were assimilated. Totally. The only person which kept monotheistic faith, the Shevet Levi, so whoever's a Levi, be very proud of yourself. But Lamais, except for that, we were all in bad place. How many times have I asked you people to read in the Yechezkel Perek Chof Ba'iyun, that it took us so long to get away from Avodah Zarah, even in the Aboim Shana B'Midbar, we didn't want to keep Shabbos, because Shabbos was cutting us off from Avodah Zarah. I think I once quoted the Medrash where it says, Avayasa Moshe, that Moshe had to force them to leave the Kriyas Yamsuf and go towards Sinai because they didn't want to. They said, oh, look, all the big governors which were our taskmasters are dead here. Bon Nasa Lona Avodah Zarah v'noshev leMitzrayim. But Daf gave me this Moshe over here in the desert, with that Torah, what do I need this for? Let's go back to Egypt. We'll get our good old Avodah Zarah. We'll go back to Egypt. What our problem was, it wasn't comfortable. Now it'll be comfortable. So why would I want to go to a Kodesh Baruch Hu with a Sinai, with Torah? What do I need this for? That's what they were holding. And this is after a year full of Makas Mitzrayim, with Shchitas Korban Pesach, with the whole 9 yards. Let's face it, they were in a very bad place. So they all asked, so how did they leave? How do you get them to leave? How do you get millions of people which are totally assimilated culturally? They really didn't have any religion. Their religion was the religion of Mitzrayim. How do you get them to leave? Well, when it says Gilu Shechina, there was a reason for it. The answer is what he did. They didn't have a chance. This was purely Pitu Iktana Oinasu. He simply infused or revealed a tremendous truth to them called Gilu Shechina, and they just followed it like a butterfly follows light. As a child, I used to read fairy tales. So there's a very famous German fairy tale called The Pied Piper of Hamelin. Very German. If you read it, it's such a German story that it's terrible. Today, in retrospect, lately I got a hold of a book called Fairy Tales Written in Politically Correct, like Snow White and the 7 Vertically Challenged People. You don't say dwarfs, you say, I'm, for example, horizontally challenged. But they were vertically challenged people. I like the word vertically challenged. Okay, so I call myself horizontally challenged. That's PC. It means fat. Okay, but so there was one on this one too. It's so funny how it's how it's rewritten. It kills the story. But if you're PC, you kill everything. But PC means politically correct. So here's the story. The story is there's a town called Hamelin. It's actually there. Hamelin's in Germany, and they had a rat problem, a mice problem. So this fellow comes and he's a piper. You know, he's like a pipe, a flute. He says, "I can solve your mice problem." He says, "Oh, well, you have to pay me X amount of gulden, I guess. I don't remember the coin. I think it's gulden at the time." And they said, "Okay, X amount of gulden you get for getting rid of our you're our exterminator." So he goes in the middle of the townlet or town, whatever it was, the burg. That's what it was, and he starts playing his pipe, his flute, and all the mice come out of the holes, and they follow him. And they're like glassy-eyed. They're just following him. a very German story. He takes them to the river, and they all fall down into the river. They all do, suicide, and they die. And he drowned the mice. It's a German story. Okay, then he comes back to the Bürgermeister, to the town hall, and he says, okay, I want my gulden. And they says, Chabubala, forget it, The mice aren't here. Take a walk with them. Why would we pay you? He says, I'm suggesting you pay. And they told him, fly a kite. How to say it in German, I don't know. But, so he says, okay, you'll be sorry. And he goes in the middle of the town, takes out his flute again, all the children of the town go glassy-eyed and follow that piper. And he takes them, and he takes them, and he takes them, and they leave the city, and they go into the big, dark mountains, and they never saw them again. Isn't that a typical German story? This is the story, okay? Do you understand what we have to read? You guys are reading out of Space Wars or this, I don't know whether. This is what I grew up with, okay? So you understand. It's either that or Talks and Tales, and they were boring, okay? So there's nothing there for a Jewish kid. I ended up reading Britannica every Shabbos. You think I'm joking? My parents went to sleep. I'm going to read. So you read the linear Bible, Hertz Chumash, that was one of my favorites, and Britannica. We had Britannica, so you don't even know what that is. It's an encyclopedia called Britannica. It's like 25 volumes, like 25 Baba Basras. So you have a lot of summer Shabbosim, and you read Britannica, you get it done with. It's interesting. Afterwards, you know something or another, or you think you know something, or you read about something. It's enough of Kiyas. Say, yeah, 1 minute, it's Epis Hazoy. The type of Kiyas that people have from these Daf Yomi things. So that's the type of Kiyas. Okay, so for me, in Chassidus stated that's what God did to us to take us out of Egypt. He took out his flute, and we all became glassy-eyed, and we followed him. What happened is he gave us a major artificial mind-expanding experience, which all of a sudden we saw the truth. If you ever heard Tommy by The Who, so listening to you, I see the music all around you, I see the light. So this was a rock opera. Only a Michelle was the only one who can appreciate this one. You know what I mean? This is it. And that's what happened. They said, I tell you a story. You don't need to tell a story. So talking about Tommy, you wouldn't know what it is, so I can say it. So in the Tommy album, that's a dangerous machine. Okay. So it says in the back, kudos to Meir Baba. M-E-H-R, Meir Baba. This is Admor Baba. Meir Baba, the Heilige Baba Meir. Okay? So it says I had friends which introduced me to that music. This is in the summer of '68, I still remember. And I used to do Malav Malkus in a certain place, and I introduced them to ideas, and they introduced me to music. We had a interactive relationship, and it's so ironic. My son has a yeshiva there now, that place. It's really funny. Okay, so here I am, and they told me an unbelievable story, that there was this guy called Meir Baba, which went into a cave, Mamash Hashim B'Yichoy story, and he was there for 14 years with a neder of shtika. He had a vow of silence. And after 14 years, he was going to walk out of the cave on the mountain. Now, India is a big place. When we say a bunch of people, it means 100,000, okay? The numbers are big in India. So here he's coming out of his cave on the mountain, and in the valley, there's like a lot of people, and they're waiting to hear Lishmoya, Kiyim Lishmoa Dvar Meir Baba. What's he got to say after 14 years of silence? He looks at them, he says, it's not worth it. And he walked back in. Mamash Hashim B'Yichoy story. Hashim B'Yichoy burned people with his eyes. He just went back to the cave. Remember, that's the Who. So anyway, think about listening to you. So they were all waiting to hear Meir Baba. You have to chap, that's behind the story over here. So here we had the same thing. We had Kosh Baruch Hu, didn't Meir Baba, Kosh Baruch Hu B'Choy Devatzmai. Gilui Shechina, and wow, our jaws dropped and we became very glassy-eyed, and we just followed. That's what happened. And as Dylan says, in Mr. Tambourine Man, in the jingle jangle morning that comes after, we said, hey, what we doing here? Like, what happened? Where am I? Nitna rosh v'nashuva mitzrayma. Right? What are we doing here? Hey, come on. So he gave us a kick in the pants every so often. This went on for a while. Every time he was like giving us these big, artificial mind-expanding experiences, and he did it for a purpose. He wanted us. This is really crazy. This was, did you ever read? No. There's an author called George Bernard Shaw. It's a great thing called Pygmalion. One day you will read it. And I don't know if you will. You should. When you did, after you read Pygmalion, come back to me and talk about my educational techniques. Okay? So we read Pygmalion. He literally took this flower girl and decided to make her into somebody. Kadosh Baruch Hu took us because we're good raw material. That's about it. I heard that comment once before about myself. Okay? Good raw material. Says, now I'm going to form you. And that's what he did. We were a bunch of pagans. Assimilated pagans. That's all we were. But we were a good stock. We had holy souls. We had the genes of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yankov. We had a lot going for us. We were actually a family which, for whatever reason, God chose. But at the moment, there's no one home. So what did he do? He made us into people. Well, to make us into people, he had to do, first of all, extract us literally from being the fetae of a cow into Homo sapiens. The lashon of Chazal is that the God to extract us from Egypt was l'haitzi uber mimei behema. We were an uber mimei behema. We were a fetus of a cow. The cow was Egypt. We were a baby in Egypt. Uber yerachimai. Ocheres mashi ocheres, shoyse mashi shoyse. We were one shtick mitzri. And we had ethnic identity. We decided to wear our Canaanite clothes and our Canaanite dialect, which was Hebrew, because the Ramban writes that Ivrit is a Canaanite dialect, okay? And we kept our names. We called ourselves Sidney Goldberg instead of Swahila, whatever Egyptian thing there is there. But look, come on, we're a bunch of Egyptians. We worshiped the Lord Ra, and we actually also, which was the son of the Lord at the time, we were sure that Pharaoh, was God. And, we were the same thing. And we were very angry at these Makkos, because my best friend, that's my brother-in-law, that's my wife. She can't take a shower for a week. I don't see the difference between me and her. And I have water, and she can't take a shower. Hello? It's my best friend. He's infested with frogs. He's my brother-in-law. He's my father. That may not be your best friend. My best friend. Okay? What do you think the Jews liked these Makkos? I'm sure they were very angry. I mean, I would have been angry. This is not a simple experience to extricate people which are culturally, religiously assimilated, and all of a sudden you're going to somewhere else, you're taking on a totally new identity, and everything you know till now hate. I mean, that's a real flip job. And why would you do this to me? And why do you? Because I want you. So I'm going to form you. You're raw material. In order to form me, he had to blow my mind quite a few times. And I mentioned multitudes of times. He did this consistently for 2 years. And we rebelled constantly for those first 2 years in the desert, if you read your Chumash. We were going crazy. He was going crazy. We went on him. No. You name it. We. Zacharis Hadaga, you know what I mean? Oh, I remember the fish coming at the water, whatever they found there. Nitna Rosh Hashanah Mitzrayim, wow. Moshe Rabbeinu Bibliang from Mitzrayim L'Kachlan L'Muz B'Midbar. We complained. After 2 years, it was quiet. The most beautiful part of the Bible is the 38 years of silence in the desert. That means it worked. That means that the professor formed the flower girl into a lady. It made, yeah, it worked, but it was very violent. It was a very violent experience of constantly blowing our minds with, he didn't choke us, he blew our minds with truths until we actually got used to them. In Sprach, he gave us, he injected us with Meichen the godless, all that we were ktanim. He blew up our brains, all that we were very small. But it was artificially blown up. So over time, it shrunk, but a little stayed, residue, until finally, it actually worked. That would happen. Kaf Aleim HaKegigis was the ultimate Gilui Shechina, which they realized, if we don't receive this, our life is a waste of space. Imatam Kablim Satar Muti Veloy Poitia Kirasan didn't mean that I first forced you. It was Pitu Iktana Oinasu. I basically seduced you. I blew your brain up in such a big way that you couldn't have said no, but you didn't have the possibility of saying no. Because at the time, that was, how could I not do this? But then you woke up, and see what happened? 39 days later, you made yourself a cow. You were over there, deserved the most heinous crime the Jews ever did. That we're paying the price, Adiyam Hazeh. That's what happened. That's the story. The story is he blew our mind. So this is Meidor Rabbi L'Raisa. Meidor Rabbi is we accepted the Torah with a certain Havana of Gilui Shechina. But when it's Hester upon him, we never met you. We didn't know what it meant. We never heard of a God of Hester upon him. We didn't meet him. The first time we met Hester Panim, Anechi Astra Astis Panim Beisayud, that's in Golos. They look at the Teichach over there, in the Chumash. That's talking about Golos. I and Shom, Beramban. That's Golos. We didn't know that God before. We accepted Nasav and Nishman to the God of the Meichen, the godless, which, wow, there's a God. We didn't know about a God of Hester Panim. We didn't meet him. That's not the one we married. And all of a sudden it's someone else. So we didn't think, I'm going to say it again, obviously, we didn't think that he became old and tired. We think the relationship changed. I married you in a certain context. There's a new context here. I don't know you. That's what happened. That's the story of Purim. The story of Purim is that suddenly we realized the relationship is so deep, it's much more than any context you can dream about. In other words, the Chiddush of Purim is that the kesher between Klal Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu, the bris, is beyond all context. It's beyond all questions, it's beyond all perceptions, it's beyond anything. It's got nothing to do with anything you'll understand. Because in logic, it makes no sense. Go tell the person in Auschwitz that God is with you. Go tell the person dying in the Auto de Fe in Madrid during the Inquisition, oh yeah, God is with you. Go tell it to them. Go tell it to them. Does it make sense? No? And that's what the Rebbe writes in Tanya, that there's a certain relationship even burnt into the psyche of a Jew that makes no sense. Why is a person willing to die for Mesiras Nefesh? He doesn't live with Mesiras Nefesh. Oh, he's a flagrant sinner. Like all of us. But when push comes to shove, in history, you know, people died not to deny God. Thousands and thousands were martyred and killed, and they could easily have just baptized themselves. Easily. And they were martyred. The Rebbe writes in Tanya, not in Tanya, in Torah Or, and the Gura writes this too. I'll tell you something interesting. When they both say the same thing, it's easier to talk. That the Gzeira of Purim was on Yehudim. Yehudim is Koifrim B'Avodah Zarah. If they would have agreed not to be Koifrim B'Avodah Zarah, that Gzeira would not have been on them. That's something you probably never heard. The Rebbe writes this a few places in Torah Or, and it's also the Gra. Yehudim, that's the name. Chayfrim b'avodah zarah. Unbelievable, isn't it? That was the example. If they would have said, you know what, throw the towel in totally, no. Thank God. They were in a bad place. They were in a very bad place. I just described how bad they were. But you know what? Yeah, but they came back to, went back where they belong. Yehudim. And that process is what this day is all about. The day of doing tshuva from the Chagiga of Achashverosh, the day of standing up to be a Yehudi and to realize the Mika Moicha Ba'ilmim. It's there. The Jew has a hard time living like a Jew, but historically he's not going to die like a Goy. He'll die as a Jew. Does that make sense to anybody? Not to me. I mean, you don't live that way, but you won't want to embrace the church. What's the difference? Adkan. It's an interesting phenomenon through history. It's interesting to talk about what church today would be, because there's a whole new cultural reality, a new challenge. And that will be a topic which has to be discussed. I did discuss it in one of my tiny classes, but this is not the place. But historically, it is true that the Mesiras Nefesh for Klal Yisrael through Doirei Doros is not because everyone was frum. You have to get a little, this idea is a little funny. Anybody who knows, for example, Warsaw between the two wars was overwhelmingly not religious. Also Vilna, by the way. Okay, I don't think people understand. You always think this is idealistic. In Europe, they were all frum. Lo nachon. Between the two world wars, Vilna was overwhelmingly not religious. Grodno too, by the way, and Warsaw. Lodz was from. Lodz had a lot of Hasidic. Warsaw was overwhelmingly Bundist, socialist. Don't think of these. You know what? But people were willing to die for being Jewish. Yes, you're killed for being Jewish. But people were willing to die for being Jewish. There's a certain idea of a certain ingrained identity. That's who we are, and that worked. All that is from Purim. How many times have I told you this? I keep on saying it because it's the thing which probably impressed me more than anything. I've told you, my father told me. When I asked him, why are we religious? God wasn't there for you. And he looked me in the eye and says, you'll never understand, but he never left me. And he was in the darkest hell as possible. Actually, my grandfather's yard said, was it a week ago? I'll tell you a story. When there was my father was a young boy, baby, literally. He had a brother that lived in Slobodka, and whenever he was ill, and he died bystander. Medicine wasn't, the way it is today. He died. So my Zayder had just finished sitting Shiva, and then there was a big meeting of Rabbanim in Grodno, because there was the biggest business in Grodno at the time was the Shershevsky tobacco factory. It was the big manufacturer of cigarettes for that whole area, and they started working on Shabbos. So you understand, this was like a big thing, because a major employer in Grodno, and they started working on Shabbos. It means a big Chilul Shabbos of a lot of Jews. So Kol Gdolei Rabbanim came then to Grodno from Achor, the Chofetz Chaim, etc. Whatever it is, I heard this story, not my father didn't tell me, I heard it from a Jew named Rabbi Leib Kaplan. Rabbi Leib Kaplan was the brother-in-law of Yaakov Moshe Charlap, happened to be the grandfather of Be'eri, Rashiva of Merkez Harav. He was, Rabbi Leib himself was, they were both son-in-laws of Reb Shlomo Nosson Kotler. You would know who this was. The kids, one of the Rashivas of Slobodka before Reb Zalman. Forget, rabbinic history is not your. Was a Gavra Alima, a tremendous Talmid Chacham. He was a Musmach Smichis from the Aruch HaShulchan and from the Chofetz Chaim. Not bad, Smichis for a halal, you know what I mean? So he told me, he was there, so he told me this story. So the Chofetz Chaim was there by the Asifa, and he saw my Zayda was sitting in the corner. He was sad, he just got up from Shiva. This is not, he went because he had to go. So he goes, he calls him by his name, says, what's wrong? So he says, I just lost my son, blah, blah, whatever. Then he said, who's this little kid with you? He says, it's my Muzhinik, it's my baby. What's his name? She says, his father's name was Yitzchak. So Chai all of a sudden got very rigid, closed his eyes, and he said, B'hai Lishna, there will be a time where there will be Echad Mishpacha B'shnai Min Ha'ir. U'b'ki Yitzchak Yikor L'chazorah. He's the only one of the whole family. It's a frightening story. The only time I ever told the story in public was at my first daughter's engagement party. Why? Because afterwards in the war, when they were together and they were in Dachau, and they were literally undressed in front of a pit, and they were going to be gunned down. That's I went to the story of my Zayda that made him when he was killed, and my father was next to him. And the Zayda says to him, Yitzchak, you have to remember the Chofetz Chaim's bracha, you can't die. So he tore out 3 golden teeth from his mouth. Try doing it. And gave it to one of the guards. They kicked him away somewhere else. He survived. Terribly. He went through hell, but he survived. I tell the story because at my engagement, when I got engaged, I walked my dad back from the hotel to his apartment. He started laughing. He says, oh, my teeth, my teeth, my teeth. That's when he told me the story, finally. I heard it before from Rabbi Kappa. Here's my teeth, okay? My dad's teeth. Okay, so, so when my dad says he was with him, I trusted him. That's Purim. Purim means to say, he's with me. It makes sense? No, it makes no sense. Everything says he's not. Everything says there's nothing happening. Everything is over. And God says, no, stop it. Stop. I don't need your sense. Your sense is 2 cents. It's more than your sense. Don't you understand that there are relationships which are more than logic? Does anybody understand that? There are relationships which are much deeper than logic. There are relationships much deeper than words. You know what? When you're first dating, Nebuch, you have to think, is it a logical shidduch? And you also talk a lot, and you talk narishkeit. You giggle over spaghetti, and you discuss philosophy. I remember this kid comes to, oh, Rav, what should I talk about today? Should I talk about a michtav melio? He says, oh, God. You know what I mean? Who are you dating? Like, come on, like the Rocks, try Mick Jagger, What? You know what I mean? Come on, like, just be normal. But that's the way it is. But you always talk. There's a lot of talking in the beginning. And until you get to really know each other, and mamash you feel one, then who talks anymore? Why talk? Just be there. Just be there. Just be there. You know what? I'll tell you. I want to have to see of Purim in my mind. One of my children, I don't want one because they'll come here. Oh, that's whatever. So he asked me. He was a little child, and he crawls into my bed, and he says, "Abba, I'll just go to Naimshcha." I'll just go. I just want you to look at me. And he's dozing up and sleeping. It's unbelievable. He didn't want me to talk to him. He just wanted to be there and look at him. That's a relationship. When you have to talk, it's already cheap. Real relationships that I just want to be with you. And sometimes we don't talk. A lot of times we don't talk. All your speeches and your michtav eliyos you keep for I don't know when. Real relationships, who talks? As a paraphrase from good music, the sounds of silence are the deepest and the loudest. Words, dime a dozen. I'm not joking when I say this. That's an honest truth. Mika moicha be'ilmi means the relationship is so deep, it's so ingrained. Why do you want me to reveal myself? I'm there. I'm looking at you. We always say, Daddy, but make sure your eyes are open. I know. That's what I pray for on Purim. Please just look at me. Don't talk to me. I know you're not going to talk to me anyway. Don't talk to me. What can I do? Okay? Look at me. That's Purim. Yechapa Purim. That's what a Purim is. Mika moicha be'ilmi. God is silent. God is mute. But it's so deep. That's what real relationships are. That's what Yiddishkeit is. It doesn't always make sense. And sometimes it looks bad, and sometimes it's painful. Yeah, and you pay a price, but it's real. That's my relationship. And it's a deep relationship. So that's what this whole Yom Tov is about. It's Kabbalah HaTorah Mamish. You see, you don't just eat matzah without explaining because it was with haste. You know what haste means? You were glassy-eyed and you walked without thinking. Eat the matzah and say, I ate it because I walked out glassy-eyed without thinking. Chipazon. How did he get so many people to walk out within 18 minutes, for goodness sakes? Well, he used to try going on the Tiyul Bet Sefer, get the guys into the bus. The madrich, תנסה פעם, תוך 18 דקות. מה זה? בצבא אתה לא משיג את זה. All these Jews, get them out in less than 18 minutes. זה פשוט, it's a nest more than the whole Kriyas Yamsuf. It wasn't a nest. Man, they were doped. They were zombies. They were bli das. It was kol kulei bli das. That was chipazon. Matan Torah was kol kulei bli das. Don't you chap? You know what finally we did on Purim? And finally we did it b'das. We decided to do it because we wanted to do it. He didn't inject anything then, man. He was just looking. Kids, I injected so much. This sounds pretty bad. Yeah. You whatever, I was your candy man for X amount of time in history. Now, boys, let's see what developed. You know what? And here's an unbelievable thing in the deepest way possible. You know what real development is? Can you yourself, with your das, attain a relationship which is more than das? Now, usually when we do things out of logic and of our own volition, we become very rigid in what we do. We fall in love with the way we do things. We're very egocentric. And we fall in love very much in our midah, in how we do it, in our style. And if you know anything about education, you can never grow that way. If you become very rigid, you can't grow. Real growth is taking something and taking it out of its rigidness and then applying its broader depth to other images and other tsuros and other places. If you're very tied down to a form, you can't take that to other places. You're stuck in where you are. True growth demands the capability of all your das. Can you break your das and take the shalomi das out of your das and apply it to somewhere else? And then when you get something because you grew and you thought, can it become your second nature, your intuition? It's the way you see things without having to think the logic. It's just, that's who you are by today. That's how I think. That's what I do. That's how I see things. That's when it worked. Because then you can take that value to a whole different surah which wasn't there before. As long as you're stuck in a certain imagery or surah, then that's all you're going to do. You won't know what to do when that surah doesn't exist. You'll fall apart. If all your religion was the Beis HaMikdash, there's no Beis HaMikdash, you're dead. If all your religion is going to be your comfortable observance in the communities that you grew up with or the yeshivas, so that's your support system, so that's where you're going to thrive. As soon as you walk out, you dead meat. Are you capable of taking all that and internalizing something which comes without your das? It's more than your das. It's ingrained, it becomes my value system, how I feel, how I think. Then you're a different person. Now you can take it to different planets and different places totally that you couldn't have done before. Can you take your Bavli or Shalmi and then read Aristotle's Ethics? Can you take that, and I hate to say this, listen to the Who. What do you hear when you hear music? Do you hear the Narishkeit and the Nevola of the composer? Or are these words that you're actually hearing, whatever you're hearing, in a different planet totally? I don't know about you, when you say Tilim, Havdalah of Havdalahs, Maskal LeDavid B'Yosef B'Ma'ora Tefillah, do you think about a cave in Adulam? Or are you capable of thinking of your own cave? Are you capable of conceptualizing the concept of cave and seeing yourself in a cave? Can you visualize? Can you visualize? Can you see things? Do you have imagery? Do you experience ideas? Well, then you can mamish say Tilim. If not, Rachmanas Lefaich, what can I tell you? A very poor life. A bunch of chanters, Gregorian chants. Mamish to say Tilim is to be in the cave. Mamish to say Tilim is to see your life in the psukim. But I don't have that. Oh, well, if you know how to walk out of the rigidness, all that is the story of your life. Find yourself there. And if not, what you doing, man? You got it all wrong. The chachma of das, this is big ishbitz, is to become a big shalomi das. The das is supposed to be so internalized that you become das without thinking. You know what it is? It says, by Yankov Avinu, it says, Sikel es yodov. So the uncle says, Achkemin yudohi. His hands had wisdom. It wasn't just in his brain. His body moved in a certain way. Achkemin yudohi. Lashon of the uncles over there in Parshas Vayechi. A very important piece. Your ragloif marlichin oisay lebeis hamedrash. You ever hear that lashon in Gemara? Your feet are supposed to draw you there, not your head. That's called shaloi midas. Midas, Baruch Hashem. I'm very happy that people with das come to a beis hamedrash. But after it has to be shaloi midas. And here goes a very important piece of Reb Leibel Eger. Reb Leibel Eger in Teres Emes discusses, Reb Leibel Eger was Reb Kivega's grandson. He became a Kotzker Chassid. He was a Chavusar of Tzaddik HaKohen Lublin, became one of the first Talmidim of the Meir Shiloach. Okay, now we know. Which was the father of the Beis Yankiv. And that's how, it's a certain base measure of thought. You know what Reb Leibel was? I'll say over something, but you have to be able to hear it. Reb Tzaddik HaKohen, when he was master of Reb Leibel, he said, I'm going to say something you're not going to believe. He was so holy, he could be mishamish mitosei with 1,000 tefillin. Do you chap what he said about him? There's one big shtick kedusha. There's nothing else there. That's a shvach that I can't even dream about. One shtick mekavel l'shchina. That's what he was. Okay. So before I discuss Reb Leibel, let's understand who Reb Leibel was. Now, Reb Tzaddik didn't say it about me. He wouldn't. Don't worry about it. Okay, but he said it about Reb Leibel, and even if it's a guzma. wow, Shane Guzma, you know what I mean? It's Guzma from it's a frightening usage of language. But that's what he said on it. Frightening? Very frightening. So Reb Leibler says in Toras Emes, I forget which chelik. This is when we take me mamish to Girsa the Yankis when my heyday when I used to learn this. So he says that Lematzecha Ayel Sashachar, which is the mizmer you say Shir Shiyam of Purim. Ma Ayel Sashachar is the Laila, the pitch black part of night right before it turns into day, the darkest part of the night. Ma Ayel Sashachar, this is the Laila, which is Saifa Laila. So it says, Af, Esther is Saif Kol HaNisim. That's it. We don't have any more Nisim like that which are recorded, which with Ruach HaKodesh says, here, look at the Nes. It was Taka Esther upon him, but at least we had Ruach HaKodesh pointing out, look at the Nes. Now it's over. There's no more even look at the Nes. So he discusses how, now we have to do it on our own. Now we have to write our own, look at the Nes. So he says over there something very important, which is Negeh Fa'avodas Hashem. He says, Purim is two things. And one day, it's very clear from the Gemara, the last piece of the Gemara in Megillah. What's the last piece of the Gemara in Megillah? Anybody make a scene on Megillah? Last piece of the Gemara is Moshe Tikni Yisrael, Shushalim B'Doshim, Hilchos Chag B'Chag, the last two lines of Megillah. Okay? And says, that's about Pesach, man. What's it doing? That's the Siva of Megillah. So he says, yeah. Purim is the Akdama for Pesach. That's number one. And Purim is also the end of the year. Because the Rosh Chodashim is Nisan. If you go according to the din of Abal Ta'acher, so you know that the halach of Kisidron of Regolim is Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. And the Shnas HaRegolim, which is Negeh Fa'avodas Hashem for Kirbanis, starts in space, is Nisan, and ends at the end of Adar. So you look carefully, Purim is Shloshim Yom Kodem HaRegel, the Achana for Pesach. It's actually culmination of the Avodas Hashem of the whole year. As much as you took in Kedushas Hazmanim, whatever these Yom Tovim are supposed to bring into your dots, supposed to grow with, the year ends now. So you know what this is? This is Chazorah week. No joke. This is the time where you now have to internalize everything you grew through the year, from last Pesach, Shavuos, and finally Sukkot, translating into Chanukah and whatever you did. And now comes Purim. And you're about to move to to next grade. You're graduating. Because the next class starts as Chodesh Nisan. And the first final is Tesvav Nisan. That's how it starts. The semester is ending, literally. Okay? So the Yesod is, he says, you know what this is? You have to be able to look at this month and somehow internalize everything you gained or grew during the year. Now, how do you do that? And this is what he says, what we said before. Did you grow? Are you capable of doing it Shalei Midas? Is your Yiddishkeit only rigid? Or is it capable of being Shalei Midas? And the Pasuk, Elohim Aseichel Isaselecha, Mizbech Adom Etaselecha, so the Me'eshaleich says, and the Pasuk, Lo Re'isim Kol Temuna, says, God did not give you rigidness. Don't get stuck in a rut. Don't make it into, that's the way it is and nothing else. No. This is what we do, but now there's so much more there, translated into other tziyurim. That's the famous Ramban that we spoke about so many times. You have to take the mitzvahs and translate it into values, then translate it into sicha noah, pirkei noah, pshara, v'fnim b'shur sadin. You got to take it all to become a different type of a person, and then react in a certain way which has nothing to do with, it's not the gray area, that's the whole life has to be translated in your Shalei Midas, because you're a Shalei Midas, you're not, oh, and I'm doing a Shem Mitzvah. No, I'm that type of a person. How many times did we discuss that the mitzvahs of Bikur Chayim Ba'avayis Sames, the dead man is not your lulav that you're shaking. Your his chanchus is supposed to make you a certain type of a sensitive person with that which is Haydach B'Daka Kadosh Baruch Hu. So you will naturally visit the sick and you will naturally do right things. How many times have I read the Rambam where the Rambam said that all mitzvahs which are sichliyos, it's not enough to do the mitzvah, you have to identify and internalize the value of the mitzvah. The Rambam Mishmana Prakim. It's not enough not to speak Lashon Hara. It has to be internalized. How could you? It's not enough not to steal. It has to be internalized. I have to be honest. Ayid darf sein gleich. It's not enough just to wear tzitzis. You have to internalize. That's the famous Bach. That mitzvahs which have a leman, the kavanah is ma'akev. It includes tzitzis. Leman tizkiru. As soon as there's a leman, that kavanah is ma'akev. The shorish mitzvah is to get to that kavanah. So whether it's with chelis or not, that's another question. But kisei hakavod is there with the blue or without the blue. You better start thinking about that. No, we have a hard time. I don't do it with the ocean. We discussed that. So you learn a plat gemara with the Tosfos and you'll see kisei hakavod. That's all. See chachmasa yizborach, and you think this is chachmasa yizborach. Wow. Don't need more. Maybe some people need other things. At the end of the day, that's what it means. So Purim is actually the time which actually we celebrate. How do you do Shalom Midas? How do you do Shalom? It's your test. It's your final. How do you act when you don't have the Shilton Hadas? Is your Das internalized? You succeeded. Your Das not internalized, you're a freaking behemoth and a failure. It's a very dangerous holiday. Let's see what you say naturally. Let's see how it comes out. Are you the Gavra? Are you the Ben Torah? Are you the Eved Hashem Ba'ava V'yira? Are you? What have you done for a whole year? Has it become something which is so real it doesn't matter anymore whether you think about it? It is achkimili. Are your hands wise? Oh, no. When you're conscient and you're this, you act, you're tired, they feel very sheepish, very nice. What happens when that's not there? There's definitely values that you have, which I really hope ingrained by your education, that you just won't act, you won't do certain things. I'm sure that no one will strip nude and walk in the street. I hope. Okay? Yeah, certain things you just don't do anymore, okay? A Ben Torah, there's a lot of things he doesn't do anymore. A Talmid Chacham sheyesh bo idea is a Gan Eden. Ein bo idea nevela toiva himenu. Lashon HaGemara. Kol Talmid Chacham she'ein bo idea nevela toiva himenu. Are you a nevela when you have no das, or the das became so ingrained that there's no way of not having das? You might have conscient das, you have das shalomi das, internalized das. Ach gemindeli yodoi, sikel is yoda, vifus the das came into you. That's the acid test of Purim. So dafka, that's the exercise. If there is a meaning at all of Yechidus to this idea, oh boy, I'm not sure I would take that test. And I suggest no one take the test until he thinks he has a chance of survival. Because the flip side is, you're walking nude in the street. The Rambam calls you a behemoth chayv. A person which is intoxicated, he literally has the megunek moshe dam afshitet gadaf. Well, nude. He says it in Mer Nevuchim. Look at a person that's drunk as if he's walking around nude in the street. The Ochos Chaim the Rosh says the same thing, by the way. So when I see a young boy drinking, I say to myself, wow, he's so sure of himself. I'm impressed. I didn't see it in his Taisvis. Don't understand. He shows you. Doesn't make sense. He says, out to be in the day Nisoyan, you just put yourself in the hardest Nisoyan I know about. Believe me. As Mendel, you need 1,000 ton of das to give away a little bit on Purim. If you don't have it, don't squander it. Okay? Relax. You're not for the test yet. It's a test. It's your final. That's why it's the end. You know what? And to the extent that you succeeded in that test, wow, that's the next stage of bringing new das, new understandings. The klal is, the end result is, you know what the pchin is? Not the bekiyas. What did you do with it? Whatever you took, can you now think differently, feel differently? That's your real test. You're in a yeshiva. The goal is not, well, it's also to know something. But it's more than that. It's to form a person with a heart and a mind. Mayach v'leiv. That's where Jews live, right? With the mayach shalat al alev, ki yadua. But mayach v'leiv. There's two things we need. To what extent have you grown with a bal mayach and a bal leiv? Some people have more than A than B, B than B. But that's the real question. Not the amount of information, not of what mark you get. It's very nice to get nice marks on your test, which is very nice, and you got your books, which is very, these are all very beautiful things. I think they're beautiful things. It's really more commendable. Wow, I just heard in the Bekiyas Blitz over there, Baruch Hashem, you know, boys learn. For me, this is one big, my chevra later, my mother were worth it to see Bachram that sit and learn. If I have any shtickle shutfas in it, man, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's beautiful. It's Gan Eden Elyon. You know, I have it here. I can go to hell there. Here I have Gan Eden, so they all have Gan Eden. What am I going to do? But at the end of the day, yeah. Real test, it's very nice, but nachal. What became real? We discussed this, but that's our blei blei of Purim. That's a Yom Tov. The Yom Tov is, how much is there a relationship without das? Just to get Kadosh Baruch Hu showed you he has a relationship more than what you feel or understand. Where's your relationship with him? Is it more than what you feel or understand? There's two sides here, brothers. We celebrate the fact that he's mamish, always with us, even when we don't see it. He wants to see, are you always with me, even when I don't see it? Is it internalized, or is it only, once again, rigid? Is it in a box? When you're in a perfect situation, you do well. What happens when it's a different box? What happens when you're independent? What happens when you're, as Rav Futner always used to say, he says, you want to know, there are two finjans, a pot with water boiling on the stove. He says, you know, when they're on the fire and they're bubbling, they both look full. When you turn the fire off, you suddenly notice one is half full and the other one's full. It says, in yeshiva, they're in the fire, they all look like they're bubbling. What do they look like when they walk out? One guy's only half full, the other one's taka full. The chachma is to be full. The chachma is to walk out of this place and to be who you are, even when the fires aren't burning. You have to have your own fire. What revs you up and makes you move and does it? That's the real question. L'chaim, l'chaim. Are we now in silence for the lone soldier or something like that? Ain't no hide till that dies, it's the heart of the ain't no till that dies. Ain't no till that dies. זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, זה זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, זה זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, אין עוד מלבדו, אין עוד מלבדו, זה זכר חבל הבונים, 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 אין עוד מלבדו, אין עוד מלבדו, אין עוד מלבדו, אין עוד מלבדו, זה זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, זה זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, 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 זה זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, זה זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, זה זכר חבל הבונים, אין עוד מלבדו, זכר חבל הבונים.